taxes!
He's a 10.
I choose this family.
Hey guys, and welcome to episode 52 of 911 Lone Star Roundup. I'm one of your hosts, EJ, and with me today are my lovely co-hosts, Katie.
Hi guys.
And Grace.
Hey everyone.
Today we're going to be talking about season 3, episode 5 of 911 Lone Star, titled Childcare. Yeah, so we have stuff to talk about, but I don't know if it'll be as long as last episode.
Which is
I
probably
don't
a
think
good
anything's
thing.
going to be as long as last episode for a while.
Right.
Just
Okay.
saying.
Yeah. So in episode, it starts with Mateo comes into the kitchen and finds a random girl in the kitchen drinking the orange juice out of the carton, standing in the fridge. It's hilarious.
It's okay. It's both hilarious and disgusting. Like
It
you're
is.
just like,
It is very
Okay,
disgusting.
the way he even alerts her to his presence is going gross.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah. And then she's like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "I live
I
here."
live here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
He's feeling it's unfortunate at that time.
I love how she's like, "Well, I'm Jenny with an I," and he's like, "I'm Mateo with an O."
Yes.
That was hilarious.
As if Mateo
Oh my
could be
gosh.
spelled any differently.
Right?
Yeah, it's literally Mateo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Owen's like, he comes in just hashtag random, and he's like, "What's all the screaming for?"
Yeah, because she screamed when
Mateo walked in, yeah.
Yeah, that's like, okay, oops. Also, I love how he did run in there. He just casually strolls in like, who the fuck decided to scream and disturb my beauty nap?
I
Yeah.
know, right? Man, yeah.
Owen.
Uh-huh.
I just love the fact that like someone screamed and he just comes up like, what happened?
Yeah, like what's the screaming for? Yeah, it's like, yeah. And then it's weird because like she doesn't stick around long. Her ride share, whatever, gets there, and so she kisses Owen like, and it's like not just a peck on the cheek. It's like a full on kiss. And
It's
like,
a sensual kiss.
yeah,
I'm sorry, but like he
It
could be
was-
her father.
yeah, it was very disgusting.
It was weird.
And I don't have anything against people who have a large age gap in relationships, but
When
not
it's
for what
low.
Owen was doing.
When it's like
Yeah.
you do you, but like when it's that large, you can't expect people not to like look at you like what the heck? What the hell?
When it becomes like a 20-year age difference and they could realistically be your parent, like you do you again, but to me that just is a little,
It's weird.
it's a bit much.
yeah, that too.
Yeah,
It's just a little bit much, and especially for some people, I wouldn't say this for Owen, but like for some people when they do this whole one night stand thing and it's with people a lot younger, it just gets creepy.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not creepy with Owen just because I don't think Owen could be creepy. If he tried, like he's just generally not that sort. But
Right.
theoretically speaking, sometimes it can be. And so yeah. I mean, honestly, and I know at first like it was thought that she's like younger than TK, but I was looking at her during the episode, like just a little bit when she came in, I'm like, she looks heavily made up, like she's trying to look younger. I would actually put her as being in her 30s.
I wouldn't say in her
Early
30s, but I would say maybe like late 20s, early 30s. I don't know. She also just had like, I don't know, I just got very weird feelings with this whole
Yeah.
scene. Like
Yeah,
just
and-
the
Oh, it's an
fact
awkward
of her, like
Yeah, it is an awkward scene, but I'm like, after she leaves, I liked like how Mateo kind of called Owen out, and we get another reference of the walls aren't that thin.
yeah, like
The walls are thin. I was like, oh yes.
the walls are very thin around here, and it's like, yeah, like TJ's probably like, and I'm glad Carlos and I got back together after Mateo tells this story.
Oh,
to him.
And Mateo's probably very glad they're back together too, and not where he can hear them.
Hey, that too. Yeah, and
Because I'm pretty sure they were probably having more sex than Owen.
I mean,
Well,
yeah.
but on the other hand, like this scene was good too, because I'm like, go Mateo for calling Owen out on his stuff, because
You know it's bad when the baby of the team has to call people out.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
but like go Mateo, like he says, like, the firehouse is calling you one night stand, and how would they know that? He's like, well, I can't keep secrets or I bloat.
And I'm just like, okay, that's a little bit relatable. Just a wait.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you're gonna have any nickname, I guess it's not a terrible one. I mean, I guess it's not ideal, but I think it's really funny.
It's actually rather clever. I like it.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm not sure I'm thrilled they decided to go with the storyline, but I'm also not fused about it. I'm just kind of like, okay, are we going to see much more of this whole one night stand thing? Are we going to see him eventually decide, like Mateo's kind of hinting he should take a big break from dating, or is he going to finally meet someone who is more up his alley? I don't know.
Yeah,
But
like,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
yeah.
This may sound crazy, but I would rather see Owen hooking up with a different girl every episode for a while than dealing with the drama that we had in the beginning of season 2 with him and Gwen.
Okay.
Oh, please. I would take that a million times over having a repeat of the first.
I would.
Season.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we all would, because like if that was like an option, but like honestly, I don't, like, somebody had told me this, so like I don't really care to see any of Owen's entanglements anymore. And I'm like, the way they were, and I was like, yes. And I was like, yeah, I really
That's
don't
fair.
care to see him date. I really don't care about that kind of thing. But we know they're gonna give it to us anyways, even if we don't want it. So we just kind of have to deal with it. And
the thing about one night strands, all that kind of thing, they leave and they don't come back.
Exactly. We hope not.
Well,
we better
if,
not see Jenny with an eye again. Just saying.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Or I think it's TK going to be giving his dad a talk.
Right.
Sitting his dad down.
So is this going to be another intervention? So I liked how Mateo even called out Owen at the end there, and he's talking about like how Owen had emotional pain, and because Gwen was just here, visiting with the baby that Owen thought was his, and then turned out wasn't his. And
to be honest, I literally tuned most of the conversation out just because I'm like, secondhand embarrassment is heavy here, and I don't do well with secondhand embarrassment. Okay, but I'm just like, yeah, whatever Mateo was saying, I agree.
Yeah, like I mean, like these kind of things for Owen are very typical, so I'm not even like an ounce bit surprised, but
it doesn't really surprise me, but I'm just kind of like, I just hope they don't make it into like a consistent thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm
Just
like, 'cause I'm already over it.
Or will they finally
like...
shove him into therapy?
Oh,
please.
That's
Everyone
he needs
it.
therapy. He needs therapy.
Everyone needs therapy, but he really needs therapy.
That's like an advertisement for therapy. Oh, he really needs therapy. I mean, everyone needs it, but he especially needs it.
Yeah.
It's so true though.
So after this scene,
you're welcome.
We're at the 126, and TK and Marjan, or not TK and Marjan, TK and Nancy are stalking the ambulance, and this young teenager comes up asking for Mr. Judson Ryder.
Oh my god.
And he calls Nancy ma'am and TK sir, which is
and then
a
just
little
like,
random, but
I'm just like, they're about like 10 years older than this kid. So like, so, that's funny.
Yeah. So this kid is, young kid asking for Judd. TK
polite as all heck. I
direction.
love him.
TK's like, he's the big guy over there reading the paper. Initially, some little vibe of what the hell's going on.
Yeah, like
it's starting to like build up.
Yeah, it's like this awkward, polite teen. So you're just like, okay, like where is this going? And this is my whole thought this whole time, is when the kid walks in, I'm like, okay, what? Where is this gonna go?
The moment he saw Judd and Judd did not see any recognition, I knew immediately what was happening. Yeah. And I was right. Just say
So
I know what's happening.
He takes the guidance of Nancy and TK and heads into, find Judd.
Judd in glasses.
Judd in glasses. Yes. Judd's reading the newspaper and like doesn't even look up while Marjan and Paul are working in the kitchen. And like he's like, the kid introduces himself and like tries to ask him something, and then like Judd's like, oh, are you so and so's brother? And I kind of missed how he said it, but he was trying to like figure out how he knew the kid. Like, why else would the kid be there?
Right.
And
asking specifically for him.
Yeah. And then it's like, can we talk in private? And Judd kind of looks at them and kind of I noticed he kind of exchanged glances with Marjan and Paul, and you could see Paul and Marjan looking at each other like, what the heck's going on?
And they're also like, private, but not too private. We're gonna be staying around
Right.
listening because we
Right.
know they're nosy. Okay.
Right. So
duh.
Judd and this kid walk a few feet away, and he's like, okay, well, he's like, what's going on? And the kid's like, I think you might be my dad.
And it's like, okay.
Like, what?
I'm just
what?
like, seriously?
When
But
I
also,
was-
I was right.
Yeah,
As soon as
I
I
mean-
saw the kid, I had that feeling. I was like,
I
okay,
was-
this is how they're going.
Yeah, like
There's literally no other reason. Also, like in retrospect, the fact that he used the full name was also a little bit of a tip off because anyone who knew Judd would not have been calling him by his first name.
Especially
Or
his,
by
like-
not by first name, his full name. Like Judson.
yeah, like his legal full name.
Yeah,
Yeah,
his legal full name.
Like but like so he like so like he thinks he's his dad, and I'm just thinking, I'm like, what the fuck, Lone Star? What
Right.
the actual
Like,
fuck? Like
he just
what?
became a dad last episode. What?
Exactly. This is my entire thing. The timing. Only part of me actually gives a shit about the storyline itself. Like, I'll be interested to see what happens. I'm not sure I'm completely sold on it, but I'm interested to see where they're going with it. But like, seriously, they couldn't have done this at any other time.
Yeah, it just makes no sense. And it honestly, I feel like if this is like the truth, it kind of discredits it a little bit, just because it's like, why now? Like, he just
Yeah.
became a father like in the
Right.
last episode and stuff, and then like, of course, not perfect timing, Grace walks in with Charlie.
Right. So here she's coming in.
Ugh,
It's
and, like,
interesting to watch like Wyatt's reaction of like, oh, there is his wife
married.
and kid. This is awkward. That
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
you
and then
kind of
Wyatt's
see
like,
it.
oh, well, maybe I can come in and talk to you some other time. Like, he's trying to like avoid talking in front of, So I'm glad that Judd didn't, agree to that. And like, he's like, no, I don't hide anything from my wife.
And like that's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
So
We
I'm glad
respect
Grace
that.
is getting it. Though I did feel bad for her. She was definitely shocked when Judd said, this boy seems to think that I'm his daddy.
it was
Oh.
like, oh my god.
The way he said it was just kind of like he's delusional.
Yeah, like, because we're all thinking
Which
that.
at this point, well, I wasn't like he's delusional. I'm like, okay, what makes this kid think that though? Like,
Right.
how did he come across as, especially when he's never met Judd? I'm like,
Right.
how
And
did
so
he
there's Judd obviously doesn't recognize him, doesn't know anything about him, doesn't recognize the name. And so Judd's like, well, how on earth did you even come to that conclusion? And he's like, well, I did a DNA test and it came up on a ancestry website, like ancestor.com or whatever. And he's like, Judd's like, how's that possible? Because my name's like, I've never given anybody my DNA. And of course, Grace is like, so about that, remember when we got married? So they had done DNA tests when they got married just to see what their lineage was. And so his apparently happened to be on the same one that this kid had used. And they made the connection.
Which, okay, this is actually funny because for my birthday, I'm getting an ancestry test. And so, like, my birthday just passed, but like, I'm getting it soon. And I'm just like, okay, this is funny timing, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is funny. I mean, and I've done mine too, like within the last couple of years and stuff. But I don't know. Just something about this whole like situation kind of just seems a little suspicious to me. Like, I don't care DNA or not. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm very suspicious about this whole scenario. Like, I don't know. But I love when Grace first walks in, and then you can hear like TK be like, "Hi, Grace," and then Paul and Marjan going over to Charlie, like, "Oh,
yeah, that was cute." I mean, like, of course, everybody's got baby fever right now. I love it.
Yeah.
And then like
I've got baby fever right now.
Okay.
And Judd's kind of like asked this. So the questions are asked like, why, what, when, and why. It explains that in 2005 his mom was working or being a part of in San Antonio in a rodeo and stock show, and Judd makes a comment that he doesn't remember that time, and
there's a photo too.
Yeah, and so he shows a picture of his mom, of what she would have looked like back in 2005, and Judd kind of says he doesn't remember, but kind of
I
got that look
immediately was
of
like,
yeah, you know, or you remember
he
this.
had a deer in the headlights look of, oh shit, I do know that person.
No, he did.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm glad they honestly I'm glad they didn't blow that up later into like like yes, they talk about it later, but they didn't blow it up into a big point of contention. That's what I was glad they didn't do. But like at the time I was a little worried they were going to do that.
Yeah. Needless to say, Grace is shocked, but being a
She's
sensible woman she doesn't flip out yet.
Yep.
And they, ask like, well, does your mother know you're here? And Wyatt says, no, she doesn't know I'm here. I just came on my own. And so he's getting ready to leave when he's connecting the dots that Charlie is a recent addition to their family. They've been married.
He feels so awkward.
Yeah,
I feel
and
so
he's
bad
like,
for him.
He's like, I'm here. I'm not here. I'm not asking for money. Da 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 da. He's like going on and on. And like, he's like, I'll just go. And then so Grace is the one that stops him and says, do you have a phone number that we could get in touch with you after we have a chance to talk about this? So he does end up giving his number to Grace and then he leaves.
I was glad that she stopped and did that.
Judd tries to talk to Grace and she's like, we'll talk about this at home. Like she just leaves. Like she just got there and she's leaving. And like she needs she's like process. She needs to process this. And also the firehouse is not the best place to have this conversation. Exactly.
And she also needs like time to like breathe it out just because like that was a lot to be dropped in. Like she just walks in thinking she's gonna see her husband and like, have some little family time like outside of the house. And then it's like, oh, I have another child that you didn't know about and I didn't know about. And it's like, what the heck?
I'm just glad they did keep consistent in one thing and make it so he didn't know about him. Because like I was just glad they didn't blow it up into any he knew kind of thing. Like
yeah, that would be stupid.
Well, I mean, I don't like the storyline because I think it's just drama that's unnecessary. Like
there's that.
I mean, but obviously we know from the Judd and Grace Begins episode that we had last season, Saving Grace, Judd was a different person after he met Grace. So we don't know what the Judd prior to meeting Grace really was, but we can have a pretty good idea, that he was, a typical young adult. Now who also was still wrestling. Drinking.
He was also still wrestling with some stuff that happened in his childhood.
Right? He having a one night stand might not, be out of the norm for him. So I can understand it, but I just feel like this is a storyline that could have either come up earlier or waited a few episodes to bring up and not like the day for us, it's like a week after he becomes a father, what he thinks is for the first time.
Yeah. Also, like, I don't know, it's just a very odd storyline to bring up at all. And just the fact that it happened here, but I also feel like it was a plot to like give even more backstory to him and show like the early 20s, I'd say, and stuff. And like, I don't know, like I'm just feeling very weird about it. So it's just like,
so I think if I remember correctly, he was 12 in 2095, so he would have been 22.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of people have one night stands. That's literally that's not something uncommon.
And we'll talk more about this side too later, but Grace is really struggling with this because she's not only processing the shock of finding this out, she's got to figure out how she feels about it. Right. Because up until now, she's assumed her husband has no other children. Judd assumes he has no other children except Charlie. So how are they going to deal with this? Especially because we don't know any reason why this kid's showing up other than he found his dad's information on a registry and knows that he's a firefighter in Texas.
It is not, it's not a bad thing for the kid to want to know his dad. Like he seems like a really sweet kid. I'm like, I actually really like him as a kid, but at the same time it's like, please tell me there's a method to this madness.
Yeah, I really hope so. Or like, it's kind of just like I thought about the other day after watching this episode a couple times. And I was like, I hate to be like this, but it's kind of giving me last season vibes with like Owen and Gwen, that storyline. And I'm like, is the kid actually gonna end up being his? Because honestly, the whole situation is very suspicious, and I'm not sold on it.
Yeah, I'm not either. And so before we can really process this, then we're going into kind of the one of the storylines that's going on in this episode, which was this family of this little girl's going to bed and her mom's tucking her in, and the girl's like, but what if Mr. Whispers wakes me up? And so then we come to find out that there's this, somebody's talking to her through like the nanny cam or something.
Oh my god, and like of course her name has to be Katie, and I'm like,
Yes.
okay,
Oh
the
my
whole
gosh.
episode, I'm like, okay, this is haunting me, and I'm like, okay, Grace, I
On a
get
scale
it.
of 1 to 10, how creeped out do you feel right now?
Okay, I like literally I had to just like watch a few seconds of like some of those scenes because like just hearing my name used in such a creepy tone, like when your name's used, at least it's not used in a creepy name. So you hear your name all the time.
I hear it all the time, but I don't hear it used like that. So that's
so I was very like, I'm still creeped out. Like I was honestly getting chills, just like, oh my god, like I can't watch these scenes like more than once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this little girl is woken up an hour or a little while later by the person on the nanny cam, and they say they left her a present behind her curtain. So she goes and picks up the present, and when she comes back to the nanny cam, she's got matches and lighter fluid in her hand.
And I'm just like, nope.
And like, we obviously know where this is going.
Yes,
so next scene is the 126 responds to a house fire, and they go in and get the parents out. They find the parents, and when they finally get one of them awake, they're like, where's our daughter? And they're like, they're hunting all over the house for this little girl, and she's nowhere in her room, nowhere near.
Well, actually, the dad had woken up, and so he says Katie, and so they assume that he's talking about his wife, and they're like, your wife's right here, and he's like, no, my 6-year-old daughter, Katie. And so they have to go in and look for her.
Yeah. And, of course, they check the girl's room. They check all these things, and she's not being found. The house is getting more unstable. Judd's refusing to leave. So Owen is like ordering Paul to like drag Judd out because he says like, Charlie's not going to lose her daddy tonight. And yeah, I love that Owen did that. Like,
oh my god, yeah, that was the best. Yeah. Like, we love that.
And so everybody was obviously upset because, when they finally get out, the house is kind of in shambles, and everybody's kind of upset because they think that this little girl is still in there and she's died. But the next day we see the next scene is the next day they're all sitting around on the couches, and Owen comes in and says that he talked with Arson and there's no sign of remains of a little girl. So she was not there, and that APD is treating it as an abduction case.
Yeah.
Or kidnapping.
Yeah, like a kidnapping. Because, like, at first they're like, oh, so she got out, like, on her own.
Right.
And then Marshawn's like, wait, where is she then?
Right. Yeah. Because if she'd have gotten out on their own, she would have been at a neighbor's house, or she would have been in the yard. They would have found her. So it's obvious that they're thinking something's going on. So insert, Mr. Our officer, Carlos Reyes, coming into the scene. And he and some of the other APD officers are canvassing the neighborhood for information. And he stops by one of the neighbors' houses asking if they've seen anything. And unfortunately, the guy hadn't. But as he's getting ready to walk away, he notices that he has a Ring camera on his front door. So he's able to get some of the security footage from that house and some of the others, and sees the little girl running away from the house, but it looks like she's running towards something. So he goes to the detective in charge, which happens to be the same detective from season 1, Serena Washington, who was the one that was dealing with Michelle's sister's case.
So they're very well acquainted by now.
And I'm surprised, like, she definitely was like, okay, well, thank you for the information, you can go now, kind of thing, because she's the detective, it's her job to like investigate these cases. But Carlos has a hunch that she knows the abductor, and like the woman's like, yeah, she's not really, like, the detective's not really sold on it.
Yeah, no, she honestly, like, for most of his like hunches, she's not really sold on it. She's just like, yeah, okay, like, which I get. Like, the people probably come to her all the time giving her these crazy theories, and most of the time they're probably not actually true, and like, so she's probably just like so used to like it, and so she's like, yeah. And also, like, she needs more to go off of than that. So
yeah, and also, like, if you're in a profession like this, it can be hard to take what someone says seriously when they're not trained specially like you are.
Right. And there's always the extra training that detectives have sometimes, and detectives sometimes don't want to hear just what an officer has to say because they don't want to admit that they didn't come up with it. And there's,
Which I didn't get that vibe here. She let him
No.
speak.
Oh
She was
yeah,
just kind of
yeah.
like, okay, tell me what you have to say. Okay, now I'm going to continue my investigation. Thank you. Bye.
Right. She's like, I appreciate your information, and I love, like, I get it. Like, and she's like, yeah, just leave your, your report, your notes, and I'll see you later. And he leaves some of them, but not all of them.
Well, he brings his laptop. He's not gonna leave
Yeah.
his laptop there,
Right.
like, but he
And
leaves
he
a note.
already had his preliminary notes. So, like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's got plenty to work off of.
Oh yeah, and he probably has backup notes on the laptop. Like,
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Carlos is well prepared. We know this.
oh yeah.
So before we get more onto this scene or storyline, we get back to Judd. He's just returning home from work, and Grace is like stress cleaning, like big time.
Well, I think it
Oh, yeah.
honestly, it's not even that. I think it's mad cleaning because I think she's mad. I don't even think she's stressed. I think she's mad, and she's just.
I
so
think she had to have
frustrated.
something to do. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think she just had to do something and not go crazy.
Well,
Right.
yeah, because like she's not mad at him. She's not mad at the kid. She's just mad in the situation, which anybody would
Right.
be. And so, like, you
Yeah.
can't just sit there and be angry. You have to do something, and she's doing something.
Yeah.
Very thoroughly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he first asked about Charlie being down, and she's like, well, she's already down. He's like, oh, okay. There's kind of a discussion, and Judd admits that, there's not a zero chance that he's the dad, but there's, and Grace is understandably upset and mad, because they had discussions about wanting to become have a family, and she had always wanted to have kids with him, and when she met him, he didn't have kids as far as she knew. So
Yeah, well, like
Mhm.
she.
And he didn't know either.
Yeah, like
Right.
that's fair. Yeah, like she was mad. She always wanted to have kids with him, and she
Right.
like she always wanted to have kids in general. And it's just
Mhm.
like, oh my god, like I feel so bad for both of
Yeah.
them. But like, oh, Grace.
And I
feel
don't
like I feel like in a way this like, yes, they have their baby, especially if it's their baby, but in a way a little bit of the excitement of it being their first almost goes,
Yeah.
just because it's like, oh wait, for one of us it may not be the first,
Right.
even if he did not know beforehand.
Well, and I think if Judd had known that he had a child when they met and Grace knew about it, I think she would have been fine with it, because
Oh yeah.
so many
I
people
don't
have
think-
like stepchildren, half children, so it's like it's all coming from a shock and trying to process, and she's mad at the situation and how they just had Charlie and all this is coming up. I feel bad just for, in general, men who do have the make the choice to sleep with someone and maybe only have a one night stand with them, that it can go 5 to 10 to 20, 30 years down the road, and you're getting a phone call that you have a kid that you didn't know about.
Yeah.
And it's always unfortunately it's mostly the men who have that happen to them, because obviously the woman is going to have the baby, so she's going to know at least that she's pregnant, and she's going to be the one with the kid.
Okay. Funny thing, just to lighten up the mood, I saw the stupidest thing, like, and like somebody was compiling like stupid things people have said, and someone was like, okay, but why don't women need paternity tests? And you just look and you're like, because she gave birth to the kid.
Yeah, really.
Like, it's her kid. I mean, if a kid disappears, then that's a different situation. But that was like the dad has to test to see if the kid is his, like, say the wife cheated or something.
Right.
But like the woman just doesn't have to test. Why is that?
Right.
Because she knows it's her kid. Anyway,
Right.
I'm sorry, that just came to mind. I had to like.
Yeah, so we go from Grace and Judd, and even Grace, when Charlie got up, she's tells Judd she can't even look at him right now. And poor Judd is like, Judd's like, oh, Gracie, don't say that, because he's struggling too, and he's like trying to go to his wife for comfort, and she's can't even stand to look at him right now. So he's struggling.
Yeah. Right? And I think he needs reassurance that, like, this isn't splitting up his family, like this isn't causing damage.
Right. So. And before we get any more resolution with this, then we're going back to the firehouse. And was it at the firehouse?
Yeah. It was like in Owen's office, I think.
Yeah, Owen Owen and Mateo, of all people, are in Owen's office talking about the dating app that Owen's on.
See, I think like Mateo is becoming Owen's like second son he never got.
In a
I
way.
guess so.
Because he's
Which
like,
I see that, and I don't care about that. Like, I'm fine with that.
No.
But at the same time, it's like he's going to him for advice about dating.
that sounds about right though. Like that Mateo's like
Honestly,
giving
I sort of
advice.
figured that if anyone would know about dating apps, it would be Owen. Another way
Oh,
it sort of
yeah.
tracks.
Yeah.
So
And then like Owen's talking about the app, the person that he met on there, and you know, Mateo's like, well, what app did you meet him on? He shares the name of it. He's like, that's a garbage app.
And you know they're talking about Tinder.
Oh, probably.
Because
probably.
like
I thought they must have just changed the name or something. Like,
yeah, they changed the name and stuff, just obviously like, copyright and crap like that. But like
Yeah.
it's just funny because like it's like, okay, you know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Like it's just
yeah.
And then Mateo's like, well, you should be on Ascent, which is like this one that the only way you can get on there is being invited by somebody who is famous, is a celebrity, has a lot of followers.
Or is that?
And so, well, Owen's like, so Mateo's like, well, do you know any famous friends? And he's like, well, how many followers do they need? And
Okay, I completely forgot about Marshawn until
Billion.
oh,
like,
I
you
did.
guys
As soon as I heard Owen say that, I'm like, Firefox. Next thing you know, Mateo and Owen are having hosting dinner at their house for Marjan and made this whole Lebanese food spread for Marjan.
I've never had Lebanese food once in my life, but it looks so good, and I'm like,
It did look so good. Yeah.
now I want some.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yes, I will take all of that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so elaborate though, because like of all the food they have, and like Owen's just beating around the bush for like the reason why
Yep.
they're doing this, and he's just like, oh, I
He's just
realized
buttering her
we
up.
never
Loves
thanked
it.
the person who saved the 126. It's like, yeah, sure. And Mars is just like, oh, what's the ask? And Owen's like, there's not an ask. And Mateo's just like, he needs to get on Ascent, or he wants to get on Ascent. And it's just like, Owen's like, I was getting there. No, you aren't.
Marjan's like, I can't. She's like, oh, okay. Well, she's like, I can't have you going all one night strand. Because it's like the famous person, the person has to invite somebody onto the app, so you can't just, you know, like, so it messes with their reputation on the app as well. So Marjan doesn't want him to get him on there and then have him start, you know,
night strand,
treating it like Tinder.
Yeah, treating it like just hookups. Yeah, that was an interesting scene.
And then she bargains like
he's like
off of kitchen duty or something like that.
Yeah, like he's like, you can have two weeks of free for no dishes, and then she's like 2 weeks, and he's like 2 months, and then like they agree on like 2 months of her not having to do dishes.
And she's like, deal. And I'm just like, we love Marjan.
Oh
yeah, I love her. And moving on to the next scene is our dear Officer Reyes bringing something to Detective Washington's desk, and she's not there, so he starts snooping.
And it's funny because when we're watching this, Grace is like, please tell me he doesn't get caught, and I'm just laughing, and it's like, she's like, oh, he gets caught. No, yeah. Pretty much.
Like, of course he does. I'm just like, honey, you do know this is an open cubicle and anyone come
right? Come on, Carlos.
I was kind of like,
what you need to do is simply act like you're supposed to be there, take some files, and go.
You know, that's what Athena would have done.
Oh yeah, totally.
100%.
She's done it before.
No, she would have just glared everyone into submission.
I know, like,
just
I
like,
remember.
Don't look.
Yeah, she does it so well. Carlos is learning though, so you can't really fault him there.
He's still like baby.
Yeah.
He's still learning.
Yeah, so she doesn't kick him out, but she does like listen to what he has to say about canvassing and things like he's talked, like ideas he's had.
Well, no. We have to talk about the funny part of like him trying to say that he was trying to organize her files because they were a mess.
She's like, oh, those aren't a mess. She's like, that's my organization.
It wasn't even
And
a
okay,
mess.
but the funny thing is, I can imagine that to him, yes, that was a mess. Like I sort of see him being a little bit of a neat freak.
Oh, well, yeah, most control freaks are.
Just a little.
And we did have last episode, we had that confirmed by his boyfriend.
I love that fact about Carlos. Like, I'm on Carlos. Yeah, I can somewhat relate, not to that extent, but like, oh yes, that's just a really great fact to know about him,
Yeah.
and like for to brought up.
And the thing
Like
of
that
it is,
totally
fits Carlos.
It does.
Like the personality that we've been given this entire time is totally that. Like I love Carlos and Rafa's amazing, but it
and like
does fit
he's
him.
like the good brand of the control freak, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Oh yeah, totally.
there are different kinds, and he seems like the good brand.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, he plays it well.
He's the poster child for control freaks.
Oh my god. It's true though. Oh my god.
Would look amazing on a poster.
Of course.
Oh yeah.
I'd put it up in my house.
I think we all would. Let's be honest.
Who wouldn't?
Only if Ronan was with him.
Oh, now that would just be double.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So he has a theory that the little girl that's been abducted knows the person who took her, and the detective doesn't 100% disagree, but she also doesn't fully agree. So like it kind of leaves them in the spot of like they go talk to the parents, try to get information on the parents, find out if they've recently had anybody in the house.
Well, no, they wanted to know because here's the thing. They find okay, we're missing a few key details here. Detective Washington says she does and she doesn't agree. And then she brings up the cloud feed from the nanny cam in the bedroom, which captured the voice of the abductor coming through the nanny cam, who had been playing as Katie's invisible friend for months. And then they're talking about, they asked, does anyone have access to your Wi-Fi passwords? And that's when they're like, oh, well, we have the kitchen remodeled, the whole crew had it. And then the mom's like, we had it written on the router. We had parties, we had guests, like anyone could have seen it.
So they quickly realize through the investigation and through the discussion that anybody in the last year could have had access to their Wi-Fi to basically hack their nanny cam, which is what happened. The abductor had hacked the nanny cam and started befriending this little kid, and even Carlos says later grooming her to follow her. And the voice sounds like it's a male, and Mr. Whispers.
Well, also it's like he said so much that you're just like, okay, probably a man.
The voice sounded weird though, so you could feel, you could tell it's through some sort of modulator. But to me, at first I didn't suspect anything was different. I was just kind of like, okay, they're disguising their voice somehow.
Which I kind of figures that because that always happens and stuff like this. And stuff.
And it's it makes sense that the person's going to disguise their voice, because if the kid knows them, they'll recognize the voice if they use their actual voice. So they got to distort it somehow.
And also if the theory of it being a known person is true, they're going to tell the parents, oh, I heard so and so on the nanny cam or on the camera last night. Or I don't even think even at 6, I don't know if kids really even realize that their parents are basically watching them. I mean, I get why people have nanny cams, but still.
To be honest, I'm not sure I understand why they have them that old. I very much see them as
understand it as much, because I
could see it for toddlers and babies.
Because you want to especially you want to know when they get up, but even at that extent, I don't know, it's very creepy. And I'm like, okay, when I have kids, I don't know if I'll do that, because this whole scenario creeps me out way too much. The fact that anybody could hack into your nanny cam and just ugh, I'm getting creeps.
I think it's, if a child can't actively respond with words like yelling or screaming, they need a nanny cam. So like you said, a toddler, a baby, but by the time the kid's able to get up and move around on their own and get out of bed on their own and scream and yell and talk clearly, so they can understand them. I could maybe see a baby monitor, like just but do you really need the video? I don't know.
Yeah.
In this situation, it worked to their benefit.
It worked fine, but it also worked against them.
True.
That's important.
It did. And before we get much
that's technology at its finest.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And that's the fear with any technology.
Even
cell phones, there's always the rumors that everybody's listening. And obviously when Siri knows what you're talking about. 5 minutes after you talk about something, you can go on your phone and Amazon's trying to sell you said item. So
this is why Eddie's
Precisely.
paranoid, guys.
Yeah, this is why Eddie's paranoid of Hildy.
I agree with Eddie. Even if I do imitate Hildy, just carefully.
This is also why you should not be giving out your Wi-Fi password to strangers.
Right.
Like that's also like, I'm like, why do they need Wi-Fi? They're working on your house.
Exactly.
Like, I guess if they had to hook up to like access some of their stuff that was online, so like playing services or something, but still, this doesn't make as much sense.
If it was like the boss needing it to connect his tablet to get plans or something, I could understand it. But the worker bees, there's no need for them to have Wi-Fi. They have their own data and their own connections. There's no need for them to be on a house Wi-Fi.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
and honestly, if you give it out, change it. Like if you gave it out to that kind of thing, change the password.
And I think there's a way. I think there's a way on a modem to like have a guest account. So like you can create like a guest where you just give them the guest version and then you can change it. And so that way they're not accessing the actual home Wi-Fi. But still, that it's very slippery slope that you have to be careful with.
Yeah.
But then, before we get much more with this, we go into Tommy. Judd's taking Charlie over to Tommy's to hang out with her and talk with Tommy. And the twins are hanging out with Charlie. And so Tommy asks kind of what's going on. And he's been thinking a lot about kids growing up without daddies. Obviously with, Charles having passed away last season. Tommy knows a little bit about that now.
Yeah. Yes. And Tommy's like, and somehow they do.
Yeah. And so obviously
somehow they turn out just fine.
Right. And obviously she knows why he's there to talk to her, to get some advice. And she asks if he's going to get a paternity test to prove it. And
right. Well, she just like get to the point. Like she's like, okay, let's get to the point.
And unfortunately, because Tommy's also talked to Grace, and up until then, Tommy thinks that Judd has no recollection of this person, but Judd does.
Yeah.
And he does explain and a little bit more about that, how he and his brothers, Sam and Nate, so we get references to actual brothers. Yay, finally.
Yeah, 2 out of 3 we have names. At least 2 of them.
Yeah. So we get Sam and Nate are 2 of his brothers. They'd been out, and turns out that this gal, she'd won one of the competitions at the rodeo, barrel racing, I think. And she came in, she was celebrating. I think they started dancing. Next thing you know, obviously, we know what happened. Possibly, they slept together, and that was it. One night thing. And Judd admits that he doesn't want to hurt Grace, but he wants to be a good guy for this kid too, if it turns out to be his kid, which I can understand. And we know Judd, he's a good guy. He's a little rough around the edges, but he's gonna do right by him.
Right. I like how Tommy's like, you're gonna get a paternity test, and Judd's just like, no, the kid's mine. And then it's like, no, you better. You don't know that. I don't care
exactly
what the website says.
Yeah,
it's a website.
To do that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. They can fault.
And it's obvious that the woman, the mother of this kid, never shared anything about the dad, more than likely because they didn't exchange information. But oftentimes the moms don't want their kids to search him out, which is why he did it in secret. He's like, my mom doesn't even know. So he didn't want them to get in touch with her. He didn't want her to know that he was even there. Which tells me that she's probably either had enough money to raise him without having, all the, child support. Because honestly, if it turns out to be, Judd could, have to pay child support for all those years, if she wants to fight it. But it didn't sound like she wanted to, and then the kid wasn't coming for money either.
Well, he could also
Yeah.
like, in a sense, he could also come after her for not telling about him for like 17-ish, 16, 17
Right.
years.
And Judd
So
could prove
wouldn't
it.
be and it wouldn't be in her best interest to come after him for child support for that
Right.
reason.
Yeah, because he had no idea he had a child, so he could totally prove with everybody that he knows and has known for years that there has never been any mention of a child, and she's never been come around to even tell him. So if Judd wanted to, he could sign rights away. But
Yeah.
that's all sorts of future, because we don't even know 100% if this is for sure his kid. But hopefully he's smart enough to get a damn paternity test and not
He
let it
better
just like
be.
guess. Oh my gosh. He's
Judd,
got
come
to.
on.
Like, just settle this once and for all.
Okay, so then we get to this scene, which is amazing. It is a little creepy because Carlos is watching the video of the nanny cam, like all of the videos on the nanny cam, so like
He's
months worth.
obsessive.
He's being obsessive, but he's
Yeah.
so hot doing it. He's sitting on the couch. He's got glasses on. He looks gorgeous. I love guys in glasses.
Oh, yes.
Same.
Like, glasses isn't necessarily my thing, but him in anything. Judd in glasses also looks good, so there's that. Like, yes, he is looking fine. Also,
Right.
like, you can tell he's so creeped out by everything.
Yeah.
And then TK comes in and startles him.
Right, and they've got
And he,
this
like,
like
jumps.
eerie music going on, and he like jumps a foot when TK comes and rests his hand on his shoulder and gets his attention because it's 3 a.m. and he hasn't come to bed yet.
I think honestly, I think what happened, which I feel like TK kind of put like some light to, they were in bed, but then Carlos couldn't
got
sleep because he
out.
was probably thinking of this whole scenario and trying to figure it out. So he probably went to the couch, so he didn't wake TK up and was watching these videos. And then TK is probably like, where the heck did he go?
Right, it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
He said come back to bed.
Yeah.
So obviously they'd gone to bed together at some point. Then Carlos snuck down, and then a while later, TK goes, Carlos, it's 3 a.m. So that's why he came down, to just be like, it's 3 a.m. Go back to bed.
Yeah. And like, so he's just like, TK knows that Carlos isn't going to bed. So he's just like, scooch over. And I'm like,
oh, I love that. Oh, he's like,
so
well,
much.
if he's not coming back to bed to be with me, I'm gonna stay here with him.
Plus, like, and then like TK is just like, oh, so like, what are we thinking? And like stuff.
Yeah.
And then
like, what are we looking for?
What are we looking for?
And Carlos calls it like, this is kind of terrifying.
Yeah. And like, oh my god. And like Carlos watching it for like the rest of the night into the early morning. TK falls asleep, of course.
Oh, okay, but the morning glow, that golden glow from the window.
Yep.
Beautiful.
It's the golden hour.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so then and Carlos is picking up bits and pieces as he's listening to these audio, because the nanny cam audio picked up the voice of Mr. Whispers, so he's able to like catch. So he's trying to figure out, I think, like when was the first time it appeared, and then try and figure out like if there's anything said that could like connect the person to somebody else. And by morning time, he like jumps up with like, I think I got it. I think I know who.
And TK wakes up like, what the heck?
Yeah, and TK's like looking around, like, what happened?
Because he was like asleep on his shoulder, and then Carlos jumps up and he's like, what happened?
So it was so fun. Like, it was so like I don't know, like Tarlos and like soft Tarlos and like home Tarlos. So good.
Very soft.
This is the only real Tarlos thing we got this episode, but like it was worth every second of it.
Oh my god, it was, especially because we haven't gotten that. We didn't get much.
We
of
haven't
that
gotten
last
that
season.
domestic. We haven't gotten that domestic feel, and I love that we're getting.
We got a little bit of it last season, like when TK was freaking out about, like, did he make the wrong mistake? Like going to become a paramedic instead of being a firefighter and stuff. Like we got a little bit of it, but. Oh, this is so good. And I'm like, I have a feeling we're going to get more of it throughout the season. I hope we do.
I'm so here for every bit of it.
So,
and I'm so here for like it without plot too. Like just show us off.
Yeah, exactly. So with Carlos thinking he knows what it is, he goes to work he goes to Detective Washington, and he's showing her video of the girl's nanny from like the previous year calling the girl Katie Cat. And that's what Mr. Whispers was calling the girl, Katie Cat. So Carlos is under the assumption that it's the nanny has an accomplice, but then the detective is like, yeah, but forensics checked over the audio and they were able to clean the audio up from all the little messing around that had been done. And they figured out that it was actually her voice. It was the nanny, the previous nanny who had moved away.
Well, they didn't, she wasn't convinced even then that it was the nanny, but when she played it for Carlos, he was like, it's her and stuff. And yeah,
which he had been listening to all of this footage, so he knew,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, they're talking about the nanny. Like a year ago, she'd moved away to be home, close to family during the pandemic, but then Carlos found that 2 months ago she had rented an apartment in Austin, and that's when the voices started on the nanny cam.
Yeah, that's suspicious. That's so suspicious. Like, so like at the same time this is starting up, she rents an apartment. Okay, yep, totally normal.
Right, exactly.
Like, yeah, it's just like that's a huge coincidence, and obviously she would have the Wi-Fi stuff because she'd worked there for a long time.
Right.
But people don't think like you have any need to change your Wi-Fi password unless you know it's been breached.
Right. And Detective Washington's like, okay, well, you know, that may be her, but she wants to have like forensics check the audio and compare and do all this stuff.
Which honestly, I know everyone's like, no, you need to go find the kid. But technically speaking, you need to have all of that backing you to take a case to court.
Well, that exactly,
go, like,
because
it's a hard situation
to get a warrant.
Right, because Carlos, like Carlos said, he wouldn't wait for them to wait for forensics. But on the other hand, the only way for Detective Washington to get a warrant to even search the house or the residence, you have to have probable cause. And all of them having possibly her voice on a nanny cam, possibly saying the same nickname she used for her, is not enough. And then Carlos is like, well, he's like, I've got more. He pulls out his phone and shows her a clip of traffic cam of the nanny's Jeep 2 minutes after the fire started, leaving right near the home. So it's
everything combined is probable cause.
Yeah,
because like the traffic cam on its own would not be enough,
right?
Because people can drive wherever the heck they want, but stuff compiled,
but now
it's enough to go to a judge for a warrant.
Right. Now with a visual proof that her vehicle was that close within that amount of time, they're able to get a warrant. They go check out the apartment. They're not there.
But Carlos finds the rabbit.
But Carlos recognizes the stuffed animal that the girl had in the video.
Not to mention everything on the drying rack was still wet, so they obviously were just there.
So they had just left.
No kidding. Like,
so either they got tipped off that the police were on their way, or they literally just had left and were planning on coming back.
Which was like the thought at the time, and then we figure out which it was later. But
and now that they have a pretty good idea that this girl is truly abducted, they put out an Amber Alert on the vehicle and the little girl.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Which it's good and it's bad, because people see the Amber Alert as bad because the abductor sees the Amber Alert.
Right.
It tips your hand at the same time as it alerts other people.
Right. Yeah. But like, it's kind of just like, yeah, you got to do that because like, otherwise, how the heck are you going to find her?
Right.
Exactly. Like, that's really a thing of like utilizing, other people.
So, once the Amber Alert goes out, we go to Owen, who's on a date with the chief of staff for the governor at this nice restaurant.
I wonder where he met her.
So he's made a match on Ascent. And she seemed like a nice lady. They seemed to have some stuff that was
they were really hitting it off at first.
Yeah. And
I'm
then
not
she
sure
brought
how
up
I feel about it.
Yeah, she brought up not liking Matthew McConaughey, and I was like, okay, lady, you need your head examined. Just saying.
Honestly, I have no opinion about Matthew McConaughey because
I don't really
I've
either.
actually never seen him in anything.
I feel like I probably have, but like I'm not like a huge movie person, so like there are very few people that are like in movies that I'm
Mhm.
like really obsessed with. Like I
Honestly, I've
really
only
don't
seen him in a
care.
Doritos ad. I've only seen him in a Doritos ad. That's it.
And so before Matthew McConaughey came up, Owen asked her about what it's like to be the chief of staff of the governor and like what it's like. So Owen said was a spoof on his previous role in The West Wing. And so as soon as he starts talking about all these walk and talks about just you're walking and talking with a bunch of people and you're making plans about it, that's something they did a lot in The West Wing. And so there's kind of a nod to The West Wing. And so I have a friend who's super into The West Wing, and she was like so excited when he said that because it was like a reference to his previous role, which on that role, Lisa Edelstein also played one of his yeah, and she played what did she play? A call girl hooker. So yeah, she was kind of seeing him for I think a couple of episodes. Yeah, so that's how Lisa Edelstein and Rob Lowe know each other, was when he was on The West Wing. Anyways, so that little tidbit was kind of cool. So for people who like The West Wing, I'm sure they got a kick out of that. I haven't watched The West Wing, so I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't either.
My friend was super excited.
Yeah.
And then fortunately the date doesn't go the greatest. They don't even get to order and they ask for the check. And so they're
And the waitress is like,
but you haven't even ordered anything yet.
They're just like, this isn't going well.
Yeah. So they during the first discussion, they both get the alert on their phone about the Amber Alert, and Owen tells her, oh yeah, we were on the call of the fire. And so they're standing outside now, waiting for their car, from valet. And Owen just happens to see the alert because we get a previous clip of the abductor, this former nanny, taking the girl to a drive-through to get her ice cream for dinner, and the girl's wanting her mom, and just then the Amber Alert goes out and she's freaking out, so she's taking off.
And we find that the woman is under the delusion that she's the new mom.
Yeah, she's trying to get the little girl to try and yeah, it's creepy AF.
But so we find out, okay, that's the motivation. She wants to be her new mom.
Right.
Yeah.
And will not take it being said anywhere else.
Yeah. And so Owen's date's car arrives, and so as he sees the car, he needs to go, so he gets into her driver's seat, and she's like, what the hell's going on?
She's like, I'm gonna call the police.
He's like, great, dude, put it on speakerphone.
Put it on speaker. She's like, this is kidnapping, and he's like, this isn't kidnapping, it's carjacking. That's kidnapping. So then he explains that he's following it, so they has to follow it, the kidnapper's car. And so when they get on 911 and they answer, he tells them who he is and that they're following, and they're like, well, don't interact, just keep an eye on where they are.
And
yeah, it's
don't
confront the suspect at this time. And it's just I'll try. And the date's just you'll try. And it's
okay, I
clearly don't know him.
The date's name is Catherine.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I already read that somewhere. Just saying, because we keep referring to her as the date, and we might as well.
Catherine, Katie is short for Catherine.
So I'm being double haunted. Thanks, Lone Star. Thanks.
Oh my gosh,
we love it.
Yeah.
So next, there's this high-speed chase through town that Owen follows this girl, and they're not really having any luck stopping her. So he finally cuts them off. And they're the woman's like, what the hell are you doing? Because she actually gets out, which was oh, well, this is easier. But then when Owen confronts her and says, you're not going anywhere, and she pulls a knife on him.
Well, even before that, she says, what the hell? My daughter's in the car. And I was just that's not your daughter. And
and her face just goes,
her face goes white.
Because then he's like, step away from the car.
Yeah. Pulls out the knife.
Here's the thing, pulls out the knife, and okay, I'm here afterwards. After this, I'm just oh, my boy, because he disarms her, and puts her in like an arm lock over the car. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
go Owen. Yeah.
Yeah, like some
And she's
people
like,
hated this,
"Go
but
Owen!"
like, how do you hate this?
right. And then
Wait,
obviously,
people hate this? How? Oh,
yeah, people do hate it. Well, and APD shows up. So Carlos and Detective Washington show up second. Another set of officers show up, and they do kind of pull Owen away, and they're handcuffing the other gal.
No, we cannot miss the best thing.
I
of
know
this
the best
entire
line. I'm
scene.
getting there. So
We're
when
getting
Okay.
there. We're not even there yet.
yeah, so Owen's like
Technically
kind of
we are.
stepping away, and then so Detective Washington and Carlos show up, and he's like, huh? And so he kind of makes the connection. She's like, oh, do you know him? And he goes, yeah, it's Owen Strand, captain of the 126 firehouse. And she's like, and he's like, and my father-in-law, basically.
Yeah,
and I'm just
Yes.
like, ah!
Yeah, when
Yes.
well, he says my father-in-law, more or less.
More or less. I'm like,
when that happened, my heart literally sunk. I
like,
but in
wait
the
a
best way
second.
possible.
What? Yes. I'm like, did we miss something? Where's this? What?
I mean, he's right. He basically is his father-in-law, more or less.
He is basically. I know.
Basically,
yeah. I love that though. That was like one of the best lines of the show.
And it's just like the whole interaction, like because Carlos is just like, or no, Owen's like Carlos, and Carlos is just like Owen, and it's like,
We
okay,
finally get him saying Owen.
yep. I think it like finally happened like at the end of last season, but it's continuing.
Right. Yeah. At least he doesn't forget. Yeah. So thankfully they're able to arrest the woman, and we get the next scene is the little girl is well, actually Carlos makes a comment to Owen and Catherine to thanking them for what they did, because now the little girl gets to go home to her parents. And so the next scene is Detective Washington and Carlos reuniting the little girl with their parents. And it was like he was holding the little girl's hand, and it was so cute to see Carlos' kids.
Yeah, like telling her like, okay, you can go in now, like, oh, and like I love like the next kind of segment, because like Detective Washington is like, anyone tell you you are a pushy bastard? And Carlos being like, well, my boyfriend thinks that I'm a control freak, and she's just like, he's not wrong.
Yeah, and I love that she, and then she asks, have you ever considered taking the detective's exam? He goes, really? Like he hasn't. And I felt you could see it in his face, like he was confused and shocked, because I feel like with what we learned last season about how he felt like his dad responded when he said he was going to be a police officer, that he didn't feel like he was good enough to be a detective. So he's never really considered taking the detective's exam. Yeah. So now that, an actual detective is saying you should take the detective's exam, and I love what she said. She's like, why not? We could use a few more pushy bastards around here.
Yeah,
which was awesome.
Yeah, I love the whole thing, because it's like, like I feel like with Gabriel and Carlos, I feel like Carlos has always just felt like he's like what he does isn't good enough, even though his parents are proud of him, right, and stuff. But
I feel like he's one of those people where it's like everything amazing he does, he just thinks it's part of the job, and everything wrong he ever does, he's like, oh, I'm terrible.
Yeah. Also,
I'm a little bit like that as well. So like it's hard.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, I don't know, I love the whole thing. Like just like and like it's like,
I know we've talked.
Reyes.
Yeah, the three of us have talked. I don't know if it's been on a podcast or just in general. We've talked about, Detective Reyes. We've talked about Carlos becoming a detective.
Yeah, I feel like we must have mentioned it somewhere, because I feel like
I think we put it on a wish list.
Probably.
I think we may have put it somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I feel like it's come up in some capacity, but we just don't remember it because it was so minor.
Yeah. So listeners, if you remember, let us know.
Imagine.
We would love to grab that sound clip.
Be like,
be like, we called it.
We did, yeah. So I really like that, because I feel like that was very affirming for Carlos to see that, hey, maybe I could do this. And I think it would be really cool to have Carlos as a detective, because in 911 we have Athena as a sergeant, which A sergeant is like still a patrol officer, but they kind of have the pick and choose of whatever they want to respond to. Like they don't have to respond to every call they're told to go to unless it's like a super emergency. And Carlos is right now just a patrol officer, but there's so many options if you become a detective because there's so many different types of detectives. Like the Detective Washington often deals with missing persons, kidnappings, and
Like that's her unit.
yeah, so that's her
Escaping,
unit, but
missing
there's
persons, and
so many
abductions.
other departments. There's, detectives for major crimes, there's detectives for I mean, how many Law and Orders and SVUs and that they've
Yeah.
created and all those
Oh, a
shows. Like there's
billion.
so many. Plus he could go like crime scene investigation. But anyways, there's a whole bunch of different options he has. And I think it would be really cool for the 911 franchise to have that because we don't have that with Athena. She does
Right.
investigations and she works with detectives, but she's never really, like an actual detective. Like every episode's a new case. But I would love to
And
see
she
him
likes
going
being
to
on the
work in a
street.
suit. Granted, it would be sad to not see him in a uniform anymore, but I'm sure TK would want to take the suit off of him every time he goes to work too. So there's always those benefits.
Okay, see, when I messaged the chat with because you had brought up like,
Yeah.
sad that we won't be seeing Carlos in a uniform anymore, but I'm like, but like consider this, Carlos in a suit. And y'all loved that.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We do.
It's so
I was
cute.
just like, you're welcome. And now you're welcome, listeners, for putting that image in your head.
Yeah. And I think Carlos dresses very business casual anyway, so it's definitely not a stretch. I mean, we just saw him in a suit last up in 3
That's
or 4.
what I was just about to say. Like we've seen him in a suit last episode.
We would
We've
love
also
to see
seen him
more of him
in
in a suit.
some type of like
Ugh.
dressy clothing in general. So it would be great. Yes, we would miss the uniform, but like there are other things.
Yeah. And it's not to say that he
Yes.
wouldn't, because there are uniforms that detectives wear too. They just don't tend to wear their uniform daily.
Yeah.
But it would be cool because then we'd see a different, he would still be responding to certain calls, but they would be more escalated calls than just somebody getting pulled over for a DUI or, catching somebody who broke into someplace, So we'd have a little bit more range in the show.
Yeah, I'd
That'd be
honestly
cool.
like to see him be a detective in something that hasn't been done before. Like if he does something that has been done before, that's fine. But I'd almost like something that isn't overdone just to give us like something new rather
See, like
than
I
like
personally,
typical.
because I think he would do well in it, I want to see him missing persons.
Oh, I agree.
Me too.
I do not see him going into homicide or anything. I just
Mm-mm.
don't see that being his route. And the rest of it, I don't know. There are a lot of divisions he could go into, but part of it's because I want to see him work more with Detective Washington. I'd love to see
Oh
her
yeah,
show up
same.
more.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that didn't like her. I think she was doing great for the job that she was there for. She's not there to be his best friend. She's there to be a detective, and detectives have to look at all the aspects of the case. They can't just like follow one lead and go willy-nilly on certain things.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like that
liked
might
her.
be
Mhm.
and I feel like that might be the one thing Carlos really has to train out of himself is to look a little more at the broader picture. Just simply, he was looking at it as, oh, I found this, and he didn't have the
Right.
entire broad picture. He
Right.
wasn't working the case officially.
Well, and usually
but she had to
when
take
you
everything into account.
Yeah, and usually when you become a detective, you work with a senior detective. So there's always you're going to have like on the job training in that way. And that, your partner would help you because as a patrol officer, you have to kind of see the linear steps of, okay, you're here, you broke into this place, this is what you took kind of thing. Whereas a detective has to kind of look deeper into that, which is stuff he'd get trained on.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, and so with this kind of storyline wrapped up, then our last kind of storyline needs to get wrapped up. And so we get to Judd and Grace. I believe Judd comes home from work again, and Grace is making dinner, and she tells him that he's going to have to do right by Wyatt, if he does turn out to be Judd's son, and I appreciate what she said about, if he is Judd's son, then he's family, and he's her family too.
Yes.
Which was probably took a lot for Grace to say. But I love that. I love that. It was such a good line.
Yeah, because she could have easily just been like, "That's your son.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be any part of it. Like, that's your thing." Because some
Right.
people are like that,
Mhm.
but I would never expect her to be like that. Like, absolutely not.
She just needed to process it. She needed to come
Yeah.
to terms with what her feelings were on it.
Understandably so.
And
Yeah.
obviously she still got some of her own stuff to like work
Yeah.
out as they figure out exactly what's going on.
Right.
But no, she's if it concerns her husband,
Yeah.
she's in it. Like
Yeah,
she's
right.
in it for the long haul.
And I think it's good to show that she's like gonna be there for like the whole process. And when they kind of hug, Judd notices that there's more than 2 place settings at the table. And I initially thought they were having Wyatt over. I was very shocked when the doorbell rang.
See, I didn't think that Wyatt would be over by himself. I thought that maybe that they were gonna have the mom and Wyatt over. I didn't think it would just be the mom.
Yeah,
See,
I was really
I
shocked.
thought Wyatt, not discounting the mom, but the only person I came up with was Wyatt.
Right.
I didn't even think of the mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was really shocked to see just the mom there because I would have thought that it would have been the mom and Wyatt. And Judd's obviously a little shocked, but it was definitely awkward.
It was very awkward.
But and even she was like, when she found out, she was like, she explained, I guess Grace had called her and was very persuasive about inviting her over and very persuasive about her actually doing it and not like blowing him off. So I'm like, go Grace. So Grace is handling things.
She always does.
And she's like,
oh yes,
she's like, this affects my whole family. She's like, I'm taking care of this. So go Grace. And I love how like we hear Charlie kind of in the background and then like their attention's on her. And so Grace actually voluntarily lets her hold Charlie. And it was very odd, but good to see like Grace was open because most new moms are like, I'm not gonna let anybody that I don't know touch my child.
Yeah, but I feel like it was a good like connection thing because they're both mothers, and I feel like it would have been awkward if she didn't at least offer it up.
Yeah,
like I don't know,
Yeah.
it would have just like I don't think it was necessarily odd because I feel like they're both mothers, and I think and obviously Grace knows that, but I just feel like I don't know, it would have been weird since Charlie was kind of brought up to not go there.
Yeah, I mean, like, I wouldn't be cool with just anyone holding my kid, especially like 2 minutes after I just met them. But this was she'd already been invited into the home, so there was that. And it did. Babies are good icebreakers. So
I was just about to say that. Yeah, I think it was a good icebreaker for them because we don't see the dinner. Judd had gone over to open wine and so we don't see like what the discussion was. The show ends before that, but you're right, Grace, it was a good icebreaker.
But yeah, like the way it ends is like good in the sense that like she's holding her and Judd's watching, and like you kind of like see the look, like he's kind of figuring out like, oh, this is what my new family is gonna look like, or my new version of my family is gonna look like.
I don't know if it's necessarily like this is what it's gonna look like thing, because they're still trying to figure out what it's gonna look like, but I think he's kind of coming to terms with, well, okay, something has changed now.
Which is kind of what I mean by that.
Yeah.
I figured that's about what you meant. It's just kind of like, okay, things aren't going to look quite the same anymore. Right. But I think it's a kind of we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, and I think, obviously, since we didn't see the dinner, we don't know exactly what was discussed. But as a friend of people who have adult children and younger children, the interactions with other adults, I can imagine that, parents don't often want their children interacting with other adults without like boundaries discussed among the parents and stuff. So I feel like Grace and Judd were like needing to find out from the mother she wanted, how far they wanted the relationship to like open up to. Did she, what, and even find out like, how did she find out she's pregnant? When did she, why did she not try to contact Judd again? Things like that.
Yeah.
And that was going to be a heavy topic, heavy discussions.
Yeah, basically anything that was going to be brought up was kind of implied.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? It was probably better why it wasn't there at all, because they needed
Right.
to just
Yeah.
talk it out without having the complication of like watching the words around
Yeah.
a kid that could
Yeah.
understand them.
Right. So then the
Yeah.
next episode we can see like through knowing that there was a discussion as to what that brings up next.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of me does
Honest-
wonder if like we're going to get like directly afterwards,
Yeah. Honestly, I
like if
don't.
we're going to get some of the dinner. I don't know. I think
I
it's
doubt it.
possibility.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either, because I don't think
No.
it would make any sense knowing what the next episode is about.
True.
Yeah, I feel like they didn't like it's still an open story because we're still going to be learning a lot about like what's happening, like what's going to happen with this, but I feel like this sort of part of it is kind of closed. Like we'll get more details, but I feel like the idea of what they discussed is closed.
Yeah. And yeah, so I mean, all in all, I think the episode was, a good one. It was in a way kind of a filler because we did just have such an intense 4 episodes. So it was kind of a little bit lighter in some sense, a little bit creepier in other senses.
I never I know like there are episodes that seem like fillers, but I never like to actually like stamp one as a filler because I'm like it was just like kind of
There's
like
nothing wrong with fillers, is there, as long as they're done
no.
right. Like
Right.
that's not a like bad term to put as an episode. It's just like, oh yeah, it's paving the way for what's to come next.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's not a bad thing to be a filler. Like I'm not thinking that way either too. I just it was definitely some more one and done storylines, like the police storyline, the kidnapping, and then I mean obviously we're gonna see kind of where Owen goes with the whole dating situation.
I don't know if I
Um,
want to see where he goes with that, if I'm being
well,
honest.
we don't want to, but we know we're gonna get it. And
Okay.
then obviously seeing like what is gonna come of this Wyatt storyline too.
Yeah. I like it was a good episode. Some of the details in this episode I don't like like the the major storyline
Yeah.
brought up.
Yeah.
Don't like it. Still think it's bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna be
Yeah.
sold on it until the very end. Let's be real.
Yeah.
But like it was a good episode. I honestly appreciated that it was besides the creepy aspects, it was pretty like straightforward, light episode. It wasn't like anything like major. I mean, we did just go through 4 major episodes of like, is TK gonna die? Even though we
Right,
all knew he
exactly.
wasn't going to die. Like it's just
yeah, and then agreed. I think we needed it to not be so intense.
Yeah. And like I will sit down and I watch the entire kidnapping storyline without any of the rest of it, and it will still feel like a full episode, because that's what I did in my rewatch. I literally skipped everything else and it still felt like a satisfactory episode.
Yeah.
I mean, and for me I was happy to see Tarlos because we know at the end of last episode they got back together. And we see that they're being domestic, which means there's a solid relationship again. We know that they're gonna have things to work on, but to see them together was great.
I loved seeing them just like curled up together, like TK blearily paying attention to what Carlos is doing, then just out.
Yeah.
How can he fall asleep to that? I'm sorry, that not me.
Yeah,
I don't think he was fully awake to begin with.
He wasn't.
He was just like,
he was half asleep.
Where's Carlos?
Yeah.
I would even if I was half asleep, I wouldn't be able to fall asleep to all that.
Yeah, that's true. Because like Carlos initially had earbuds in, and then when TK came, he took the earbuds out, and then because TK was like, what are we looking at? And so he must have turned it up so the volume. I'm like, yeah. So I wouldn't have been able to sleep to that stuff either. And then of course my favorite line is, "He's my father-in-law," more or less. That's probably my favorite line of the whole episode.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites. I love it.
Oh yes. Yeah, that's my favorite.
Oh, love it. That was so good. But yeah, I mean, it was good. I'm excited for next week's episode just because it's alien themed, and I love that kind of stuff. So,
I'm excited for it because it's basically gonna be the ghost stories episode we never got, which we had been talking about before
right.
this description came out, and I was
Yeah.
like, guys,
Interesting. Yeah. Which is random that it's going to be on Valentine's Day.
okay, like I really wish they would have just done a Valentine's Day episode. Like I'm kind of mad that they're not doing a Valentine's episode. Like you had the opportunity to have a full episode of Fluffy
Yeah.
Tarlos.
Yeah.
Like
But before we get
over-
into the talking about the promo, maybe we should talk a little bit about fan thoughts if we had any.
oh yes, I have quite a few.
What did TJ say?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
What did TJ say? I love how you brought that up because I did.
We have their fan thoughts and we have TJ thoughts.
I'm sure he appreciates that. I don't.
We
Let me pull that up.
we recognize you, TJ.
Yes.
Of course, because you guys you guys know this, but nobody else knows it. TJ and I talk extensively the night the episodes air.
Yeah.
So
Which I love that
TJ
you have someone to talk to about it, because we don't even EJ and I don't watch it until the day after when we
Right.
all watch it together.
right. Okay, so DJ said it was good, but Judd's storyline is stupid. Owen date, meh. Feel like he could do better. Okay, I agree. I was like, okay, so we basically had the same thoughts because I was like, okay, I do think that storyline is very stupid, like not here for it. And Owen's date really don't care. Even if it was a good date, I wouldn't care for the other ones. Somebody said really good. Grace was amazing. She was heartbroken over the Wyatt reveal, but she wants Judd to have a relationship with him. The whole "it's not fair" speech was heartbreaking. Loved seeing Carlos working a case. Mr. Whispers was creepy, and of course, he's my father-in-law, more or less. Heart.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely loved it. Although I didn't think about Judd having a kid was necessary. It wasn't.
Mm-mm.
No, there was
No, I
no
agree.
part of that was necessary.
Carlos and glasses, of course, love.
Yes.
Also,
Absolutely.
TK
love.
falling asleep on him while he works, so sweet. Oh,
Yeah.
I love it because those are like all things like
Yeah.
we have said and we love.
Warms my heart to see domestic Tarlos.
Oh my god, yeah.
Mhm.
And ready for more of it.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get more. We know they're not going to have an easy road. They still have stuff to deal with, but to see that them just happy right now is great, and we'll deal with it, as it comes. But I don't think we'll get another breakup. So,
If they do, I rebel.
yeah, there we go.
They're not going to. That'd be so stupid.
But
And it
potentially.
oh yeah, I agree. But yeah,
Once
so
is fine, twice no.
yeah. Tarlos' endgame, period.
Always.
Oh, 1000%.
Rafa and Ronan have both said it.
I'll say it. I'll be the third
we'll
person.
all say it.
We'll say it. We'll be the third people.
Yes. Yeah. So for our next episode in 30, what's it, 7 or 6? 6, right? So 306 is an alien themed episode called ATX Files. I love the mashup of ATX is the shorthand for Austin and X Files. And so Owen, Judd, and Wyatt go out in the woods and they run across some bodies that definitely don't look like they died naturally. And they have to figure out what's going on. And Owen has a Geiger counter that's going off crazy, so they need to get out of the way of the area or they'll get radiation poisoning. Tommy says, I have a patient with acute radiation syndrome. We see a bunch of them dressed in hazmat suits. Grace is back at dispatch, so this must be a few months after baby's born, so she's back at work. She makes a comment that a lot of people are going to die because they don't know what the radiation's coming from. And then Owen's in some building or like an old shack, and it's like he says like something's definitely here. I believe there's mentions or something of like possibly Charles haunting or visiting Tommy.
It's like Charles is like they're getting like weird things around the house with like Charles and like I don't know what it's gonna be. I likely think it's gonna be spirits, which is why there's a still of Tommy talking to the curandera that Michelle talked to in season 1.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that both paramedic captains had to go see a curandera. Just saying.
Yes, curandera.
Is it crazy, or they just maybe they're just crazy?
It must be the job description.
And here I'm just hearing Eddie's voice in my head, like you guys are like my abuela's neighbor's curandera.
That's so true. Oh my god, that's so true. Oh my gosh, like I'm excited for like that. I
like seeing that they're bringing people back from season 1.
No, yeah, like literally like Detective Washington. It's the last time we saw her, season 1. The curandera, season 1. Like I really like it. Like it let's keep it up.
Yeah. Well, who else could they bring back? Please don't bring back that crazy neighbor lady.
The racist lady?
Yeah, let's not bring her back.
I would have her back only for
I would too. I think
shits and giggles.
Oh yeah.
Giggles. That's it.
I would have her back.
Give her more comeuppance. That's
I would have
all
her
I
come
would
back just for the fact of like them being like, "Oh, not you again," and then calling Carlos to arrest her.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would love
okay,
that.
but to me, I just imagine, after she's like, "Take me to jail," and so she's waiting, expecting a white cop to come get her, and then a Latino cop comes and gets her. And it's like come around full circle because well, obviously the neighbors were Mexican and Carlos would be Latino, but still, general.
Or have her hurt and have to have Tommy, TK, and Nancy come, and she would hate that.
The people of color. Yep.
Oh, that'd be good. Like,
oh, it would be. It would be. And then TK could say, "Ma'am, I'm still a homosexual."
My boyfriend can attest to that.
Yeah.
Oh, there's your boyfriend over there.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah,
yes. He'd be like, "Oh hey babe," and she'd be like, he would actually have a heart attack.
I would like to see Colleen and Mabel come back. Mabel,
yes.
to see what they've done to the new 126 times 2. She gave us the blessing and the pilot.
Oh no. We are not going to have a buck. We're not going to have the station 2.0, the station 3.0. We are not having 0.0. Sorry, I had to say that.
Station 2.5 then?
Oh, wait, I was so confused for a good second. I was like, what are we talking about?
I knew I would confuse you guys. And that's why I said it like that. Because I was just like, if they get what I'm saying,
I definitely get what you're saying, but like at
and
first,
then when I
was
expand it, I'm like,
technically this would be Firehouse 3.0. Well,
oh
actually,
my God.
4.0 if you think that, because it was sitting for like abandoned for a while.
Yeah, but did we count that? I don't know. It's a good question.
So it's first version, then it's remade version, then it's blown up version, and then that sounds like Buck's life.
Yeah. He's on to what, 4 or 5.0 anyways.
I don't even know anymore.
Oh my God.
Anyways, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening and joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Anchor. We can also be found on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and almost anywhere podcasts can be found. On iTunes, please rate us and leave us a review. And I think you can do that now on Anchor as well. It definitely would mean a lot to us to get some reviews. You can follow the podcast on our socials at 911LS Roundup on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also have a Discord server, which we've been having fun chatting on. The link is in the description of the podcast and also on our Instagram bio.
You guys can follow me, Katie, at FlowofTarlos on Instagram and at ForLoveTarlos on Twitter.
You guys can follow me, Grace, at RonanRafa911 on Instagram and at SheepGirl31 on Twitter.
You can follow me, EJ, at EJ8302 on Instagram and Twitter.
Bye.
Bye.